Welcome to MLSsoccer.com's Playoff Central, presented by Samsung Galaxy, with former U.S. national teamer Corey Gibbs and, of course, Simon Borg. I'm Jason Seguini. We're taking a look at the LA Galaxy's 1-0 victory over Real Salt Lake in the Western Conference semifinal, guys. There were a lot of storylines to cover. We're going to go through them all, but I have to say, this game was decided by a Sean Franklin 30-yard blast. And when Jason Kreis sat down and they game planned for this game with C.J. Brown, Miles Joseph, Jeff Cassar, the Real Salt Lake staff, which one of them do you think brought up, oh yeah, we have to watch out for Sean Franklin's 30-yard blast?
Clearly no one, because no one even bothers stepping up. And look, I don't blame him. It's Sean Franklin with the ball at his feet. Not like he has a history of long blasts. But this was one of those goals where you're like, whoa, what a strike. And then ESPN, the last image they showed you was of the curl on it. Then you're like, whoa, what was that?
What an amazing strike it was by Sean Franklin. It's the difference in this game. Corey, I know when you were out playing left back or central defense and you got to run up on a ball like that, how well were you striking them?
I hit those upper V all the time. Probably 9 out of 10 were going to goal.
All right, guys. There were a lot of chances in this game for the LA Galaxy. They won the game 1-0. I'm not sure how happy they are, though. When you look at all the chances that Landon Donovan and Robbie Keane had, they were connecting. We talked about how their good chemistry. They had the chemistry in this game. They did not have their finishing boots on, though.
The weird thing is that both of them had issues finishing at the same time on the same day. Usually, if one is off, the other picks it up. Not today. Keane and Donovan were at the end of these chances. Neither of them could just sometimes get it on target. So that's got to be frustrating. And I thought maybe we'd see a change, frankly.
I mean, I love the way they combined. They played exceptionally well from minute 1 all the way to the 90th minute when they still had chances. But you're right, Simon. They were just off on a day. Yep. I think, going into the second leg, it might be a whole different story. I just hope that it doesn't end up to be something crucial for the second leg.
Well, let me ask you, Corey, if you're Bruce Arena, are you worried at all about this performance? I mean, those are your money men. They're going to be on the field no matter what. So are you thinking to yourself, what can I do between now and then to get them out of this funk?
No, I mean, listen, a win's a win, and they're professional enough to know how to carry themselves and put this game behind them and say, you know what, we're going to team up in training and understand what we did wrong. I mean, they combined so much. It was just the finishing, attributes that weren't great for them. That's something on the day they weren't good on, but any other day I'm still taking my chances and having those two up top, and I think they're going to, if they get those chances in Salt Lake, Simon, they're going to put them away for sure.
So, but when you're a coach and you see they're off, why wouldn't you bring maybe Zardes up top or bring Villarreal off the bench? Why not make a change with 10 minutes to go?
Because they've still been effective all match. You could always still expect something special from them in the 89th minute. Missing 10, 11, 12 chances during the game, you always expect something special from a Landon Donovan or Robbie Keane, even in the 90th minute.
That's a good point. Moving over to the Real Salt Lake side of things, we talked in the pregame show, Jason Kreis did something different. He was a little bit nervous maybe about the fast break ability of the LA Galaxy with Keane and Donovan. So he played 2 central defensive midfielders, not the usual diamond that we see from them. Right. They played a 4-2-3-1. It didn't really seem to work out for the first 60 minutes. Give me your take on that experiment, and if maybe you think we'd see it again at any point.
Real Salt Lake is a team that we're used to on the field of play. We're used to seeing them know where the passes are, find each other automatically, not even look at each other, and the passes find the other players. Not in that first part of this game where they were in that 2 holding mid formation, and you saw a lot of gesticulation, the players not clear what they were doing, where they're supposed to be, and you saw it because it resulted in a lot of turnovers. Mm-hmm. And the Galaxy didn't take advantage of all these turnovers. But you saw it didn't seem that they were clear.
Yeah, but the biggest thing, Simon, Real Salt Lake is only used to Kyle Beckerman running the ship in that holding position. Yeah. He's playing next to somebody now, and it just didn't work out. He couldn't find the ball and connect to play with players up top. And the biggest thing is that one ball was cutting out that whole midfield line and getting up to the front fours like Landon Donovan and Robbie Keane. So what's the point of holding those 2 central midfielders if it wasn't going to be effective? And it ultimately backfired on them.
Yeah, the key question is, was this a risk worth taking, the 2-man holding mids? And do you see it as maybe an opportunity lost? Because then when those guys, when they went back to their traditional formation in the 57th minute, you saw the chances start to come to surface for Real Salt Lake.
Well, I'll tell you this. We'll get a little further into it later, but they got out with a 1-0 result, and I think if you're RSL, you're happy with that. So the experiment worked enough. But look, then they shook it up. Jason Christ made some subs. He brought in Robbie Finley, Sebastian Velasquez, and Devin Sandoval. Remember, Joao Plata didn't make this trip. He's banged up. They think he'll be back for Thursday's game, but this is what Christ had to work with out here. When he brought those subs in, though, it opened things up. The game opened up for both teams getting chances, neither of which could finish.
Yeah, ultimately what happened was Velasquez came in the game, added a lot more energy, a lot more youth, a lot more of himself, just to express himself and go out there. Finley added the pace and the power up front to be up there with Sabaria and work together in terms of combining. And then they left the two central midfielders. And then, listen, Kyle Beckerman was able to be in that central role and orchestrate and start everything in attack. And that's this real Salt Lake that we're used to seeing.
Right.
You know, they tried to experiment, and ultimately it backfired.
Right. I appreciate the courage and fearlessness, really, that Real Salt Lake showed here, because LA were countering time and again, and like you said, Corey, they were finding that space between the midfield and defending, forcing the RSL defenders into some desperate, lunging tackles and last-minute defending. But I think that Real Salt Lake still continues. They said, we're going to attack anyway. It's fine. It's back and forth. We're okay with it. And I thought that was really gutsy by them to try to play that way in LA.
Yeah, I mean, Real Salt Lake definitely stretched at the back a lot of the time. We saw in this game they were making last-ditch tackles, which basically saved them that 1-0 result. And they get out of here with the 1-0 result, which seems to me like it kind of might suit both teams. LA gets the win, Salt Lake not too far behind going home. You expect to win at home anyway. But with all of the chances that LA had and wasn't able to connect on, would you say that maybe Real Salt Lake, despite being the loser here, is the happier team leaving, Simon?
And I think they have the momentum. You know, in all of these series, we're trying to gauge the momentum, win or lose, for these teams. And I think Real Salt Lake definitely has it here, because LA has to feel disappointed coming away with only a 1-0 win. And then Real Salt Lake, all the chances they were able to create, now that they're going home, I think they're going to feel confident that, hey, they'll probably line up with those two forwards again, because I don't think they're going back to the two holding midfield tactics. So they're going to continue to create these chances. There's nothing from this game tonight showed any reason why they couldn't continue to create.
I don't think Salt Lake did enough to give them momentum going into the second leg. There's nothing they could take out this game to say, you know what, we're going to build off this and create and do something extra. I think it's almost in a sense where Jason Christ is going to go back to the ship and say, listen, all right, what do I need to change? How do we go? Now, it's almost question marks for them in terms of what they're going to do for the second round.
Yeah, but what I would say there is they know what they have when they get Joao Plata into the lineup and he's teamed up with Alvaro Saborio up top. They've been there and they've done that with that lineup. And assuming he's healthy, which from what I'm hearing, they think he'll be able to play on Thursday, that's a big difference to me. Corey, let me ask you this, though. Put your Bruce Arena hat on. You've been coached by him before. You're going into this second leg with a 1-0 victory under your belt. What are you doing to prepare for this game in Salt Lake?
Listen, I think they have a great approach to this. Knowing Bruce Arena, I think nothing's going to change. Tactically, I think personnel-wise, nothing will change. But what Bruce Arena will understand is they're going to come flying, and they're going to be more offensive-minded. They're going to be the traditional Real Salt Lake team with Kyle Beckerman sitting by himself, running that central defensive midfield role. And I think, the spine of LA Galaxy is going to have to be fully concentrated. Listen, I'll take everything back. Opari really surprised me in his game tonight. And he's going to have that same type of mentality times 10 when it comes to the second round. And exact same thing for the central midfielders for LA.
And I actually thought that Jussi Zardes was their best player on the day, the most effective. He would get the ball to the box, but then nothing would come of it in the end. But I think when you look at the two rookies they had on the field on this day, the LA Galaxy, there's no reason to make any switches to this formation.
All right, Simon, looking at the other side of it, Thursday night, Jason Christ has to prepare for a big game at Rio Tinto Stadium. We've seen Real Salt Lake not come through in several big games, including the U.S. Open Cup final, which we talked about and harped on those other games. What is he doing to prepare, and how big is getting Joao Plata back for them?
Well, psychologically, I think, is the biggest issue here that Real Salt Lake have faced, because we've seen them in the big game, the latest edition of the U.S. Open Cup final, and that brought back all the bad memories, the Champions League final, the other playoff misses, the goal that they needed to advance in Champions League in another year. So they have issues when they're at home in a big game. But I think what makes this different, they are not the favorites. And so that weight is off their shoulders. And I think they're going to come into this very much free-flowing and without that weight on their shoulders. Because LA, they're the favorites in the West. They're the reigning champions. I think they're the ones who are going to be feeling it.
All right, let's take a look at the bracket. This is one series I think that everyone was looking forward to. It started out close. Now you have a 1-0 lead for the LA Galaxy. All the games tight when you look at the matchups going into Wednesday and Thursday night. The Timbers and the Sounders 2-1. On the other side in the East, we saw the Red Bulls and Dynamo 2-2 today, and New England with a 2-1 lead over Sporting Kansas City.
What's key here is that the away goals scored by the teams who are on the road in the first leg do not count as double as they do in some other competitions around the world.
Right. So a lot to look forward to as we get into the rest of the week, guys. Want to thank you for being here and getting us through all of these pre-games and post-game shows, working late nights these days. We're going to be back on Wednesday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, ahead of New York and Houston, and then Sporting Kansas City and New England Revolution. Of course, the LA Galaxy and Real Salt Lake. Like I said, that series resumes on Thursday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2. We will be on the air on MLSsoccer.com, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time with our usual pre-game show. Again, pre-games and post-games for both of those. Thanks a lot for joining us here on MLSsoccer.com's Playoff Central, presented by Samsung Galaxy.